I still remember that night like a wound that never healed. The sky was crying harder than I'd ever seen, rain slashing against my car windshield as I pulled into the driveway. I wasn't supposed to be home yet. I had a business trip planned for another 3 days, but something inside me, a quiet unease, told me to come back. Maybe it was a father's instinct, maybe fate. The house was dark when I arrived, eerily silent except for the storm's growl outside. I stepped out, my shoes sinking into mud, the rain soaking my suit in seconds. That's when I heard a faint, desperate sound. It wasn't the wind. It was crying. I froze, my heart hammering as I followed the sound around the side of the house. My breath caught in my throat. There, on the wet concrete steps, were my 2 daughters Emma and Ella curled up together, drenched to the bone, their little hands clutching each other as they sobbed. They were only 6, my twin girls shivering, their lips blue, their tiny bodies trembling from the cold. "Daddy?" Emma's voice cracked through the rain, fragile and broken. I ran to them, wrapping them both in my arms, shielding them with my coat. "What happened? Where's Olivia?" I asked, my voice shaking. Olivia, me new wife, their stepmother, was nowhere to be seen. The house lights were off, the door slightly open, swaying in the wind. "She locked us out," Ella whispered, her voice trembling. "She said you told her to." My chest tightened as the words hit me like lightning. Told her to? Told her to what? I carried them inside, dripping water on the marble floor as I flicked on the lights. The warmth of the house felt cruel now, like a lie. Toys scattered across the floor, dinner half-eaten on the table, and one missing piece, Olivia. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from her. Just one line. "I'm done pretending." My grip tightened on the phone as I looked down at my daughters, wrapped in a blanket, eyes wide and scared. Something inside me broke that night. I thought I'd found love again after years of loneliness, but what I found was betrayal colder than the rain itself. I carried my daughters upstairs, their small arms clinging to my neck as if they were afraid I'd disappear too. The warmth from the heater slowly started bringing color back to their faces, but their eyes still looked haunted. I changed them into dry clothes, wrapped them in thick blankets, and made them hot chocolate. Their hands were shaking as they held the cups. "Daddy, why doesn't Olivia like us?" Emma asked softly, her voice barely more than a whisper. That question cut deeper than any knife could. I'd tried so hard to build a home where they'd feel safe again after their mother passed. I thought Olivia would help fill that emptiness, not make it worse. "She's just confused," I lied, forcing a smile I didn't feel. Inside I was burning. I couldn't understand what had happened. Olivia had been sweet at first, loving, patient, always telling me how much she adored the girls. But lately I'd noticed small things. The way she'd sigh when they ran to hug her. The way her smile faded when I spent time with them. And now this locking them outside in a thunderstorm like they were nothing. I needed answers. I tucked the girls into bed and kissed their foreheads. "I'll be right back," I told them. As I walked down the hall, the silence felt heavier than the storm outside. Olivia's things were gone. Her clothes, her jewelry, even the photo frame from our wedding. On the kitchen counter sat an envelope with my name written in her handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a short note. "You never really loved me. It was always about them. I deserve more than being second place to your children." I stared at the words, my mind spinning. Anger, disbelief, and guilt tangled inside me. How could someone be so cruel to punish innocent children because of jealousy? I looked around the empty house, at the remnants of a life I thought was real. The echoes of laughter that used to fill these walls now felt like ghosts. The storm outside was starting to fade, but the one inside me was just beginning. I made a silent promise right there. I would never let anyone hurt my daughters again, no matter what it cost me. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat in the living room with the lights off, listening to the rain slow into a steady drizzle, thinking about every moment that led to this. How had I missed the signs? Olivia had always been charming when I was around, but maybe that was the problem. I wasn't around enough. My business trips, my late nights, All the times I thought I was working for my family's future, I was actually giving her space to show her true face. Around 3 a.m. I heard soft footsteps. Emma came down the stairs, holding her teddy bear, her eyes puffy from crying. "Daddy, I had a bad dream," she said. I opened my arms and she ran to me, curling up on my lap. "It's okay, sweetheart," I whispered, holding her close. But deep down I knew it wasn't okay. Something had shattered in her innocence. Something that no child should ever feel abandonment. I felt a wave of guilt so strong it almost crushed me. I promised myself I'd make it right. The next morning I called Olivia. No answer. I tried again. Straight to voicemail. I checked my bank accounts. Half of my savings were gone. The joint account we opened together had been drained overnight. My stomach twisted. It wasn't just betrayal of love, it was calculated theft. I called my lawyer, explained everything, and he sighed. "You need to come in right away. This isn't just emotional, it's legal now." I hung up, my hands trembling. Before I left, I went upstairs to check on the girls. They were asleep, cuddled together like two fragile hearts trying to heal. I looked at them for a long time and whispered, "I'll fix this. I promise." On my way out, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A small camera hidden behind a vase in the corner of the hallway. I frowned, pulling it out. It was recording. My pulse quickened as I plugged it into my laptop. The footage made my blood run cold. There was Olivia, hours before the storm, yelling at my daughters, calling them names, forcing them outside as they cried and begged to come in. She looked straight into the camera at one point and smirked as if she wanted me to see this one day. That was the moment my heartbreak turned into fury. I watched that video over and over, each second carving deeper into my soul. Olivia's face was twisted with rage as she shouted at my daughters, accusing them of ruining her life, of being the reason I didn't love her enough. The way she shoved them toward the door, the way she ignored their cries, it was like watching a stranger. Not the woman I once thought I'd marry for life. When the footage ended, I just sat there staring at the dark screen, my reflection hollow and trembling. I'd been fooled, completely and blindly. My mind raced with questions. So long had she been pretending? Did she ever love me? Or was I just her ticket to a wealthy, comfortable life? I couldn't tell where the heartbreak ended and the anger began. I forwarded the footage to my lawyer immediately and told him I wanted to press charges for abuse, theft, and fraud. His tone was steady but urgent. "We'll need to handle this carefully. People like her, they play the victim well." That line echoed in my head. I knew she would. Olivia had a gift for twisting words, for making lies sound like truth. But not this time. Not after what she did to my girls. I called the nanny, Maria, who had worked for us before Olivia made me fire her. When she heard my voice, she started crying. "Sir, I wanted to tell you, but she threatened me. She said she'd ruin me if I spoke. The girls, they used to call me from their room, scared." My heart sank. So it wasn't the first time. This wasn't one bad night, this was months of quiet suffering while I was too busy to see. Guilt tore through me like fire. "Thank you, Maria," I said softly. "You won't have to hide anymore." That afternoon, I met my lawyer and handed him every piece of evidence. The note, the footage, the financial records. He looked at me and said, "We'll make sure she faces justice." Driving back home, I saw my daughters playing in the yard, laughing faintly under the weak sunlight, their innocence trying to return. And in that moment I realized something. Love can blind you, but a father's pain can wake you faster than any nightmare. The next few days felt like walking through the wreckage of a life I once believed was perfect. Every corner of the house reminded me of her, the perfume that still lingered on the curtains, the empty space where her shoes used to be, the wedding photo I had torn apart in a moment of rage. But every time I looked at my daughters, I reminded myself why I had to stay strong. I couldn't afford to break down, not when they were watching me for reassurance. They didn't understand the full story yet, and I didn't have the heart to tell them everything. I simply said, "Olivia won't be coming back." And they both looked at me with quiet relief, like a heavy shadow had finally lifted. But at night, when the house was still, I could hear them whispering to each other, asking why she hated them, wondering what they did wrong. That question shattered me every single time. My lawyer called 2 days later with news. Olivia had checked into a luxury resort under a fake name, trying to disappear before the legal papers reached her. But fate has its own timing. The footage I'd found had already started spreading after Maria, in tears, shared it with one of her friends at a local childcare group. Within hours, it went viral online. The image of a cruel woman locking 2 innocent children out in a storm became a symbol of cold-hearted greed. I didn't intend for it to go public, but maybe that was karma doing what I couldn't. My phone rang constantly, journalists, social workers, people offering help. I stayed silent. I wasn't chasing revenge. I just wanted justice and peace for my daughters. Then one morning, a call came from the police. They'd found Olivia. She'd been caught trying to withdraw money from a different account. My hands trembled as I listened, a part of me feeling relief, another part feeling the deep sadness that comes when love turns to hatred. I thought about confronting her, about asking her why, but what good would that do? Some answers only deepen the wounds. That night, I stood by my daughters' beds, watching them sleep peacefully, and whispered to myself, "This storm is over. But I'll never let another one near them again." When I went to the police station the next day to give my statement, Olivia was already there, sitting across from the officer's desk. Her hair was messy, her eyes red, but there was no trace of remorse in her face, only anger and pride. She looked up when I entered, her lips curling into that same cold smile I had seen in the video. "So this is how you repay me?" she said bitterly. I didn't answer. I just sat down, placing the evidence folder on the table. The officer began reading out the charges: child endangerment, theft, and emotional abuse. Olivia scoffed after every word, shaking her head like it was all a joke. "You made me like this," she hissed, glaring at me. "You chose them over me every single time." Her words stung, not because they were true, but because they showed how twisted her heart had become. "They're my children, Olivia," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "You were supposed to protect them, not hurt them." She leaned back, crossing her arms. I protected myself. I wasn't going to spend my life in their shadow. For a moment, I just looked at her, realizing there was nothing left of the woman I once loved. She wasn't the victim she pretended to be. She was the storm that nearly destroyed my family. The officer asked me if I wanted to proceed with full charges. I looked at her one last time and said, "Yes, she needs to face what she's done." Her face went pale, and for the first time I saw fear in her eyes. As I walked out of that station, the sun was finally shining again after days of rain. It felt symbolic, like life itself was breathing again. Outside, Maria was waiting with the twins, and when they saw me, they ran into my arms. "Is the bad lady gone, Daddy?" Ella asked, her tiny voice trembling. I hugged them both tightly. "Yes, sweetheart," I whispered. "She's gone, and she can't hurt you anymore." That moment, feeling their small hearts beating against mine, was when I knew I didn't need revenge or wealth or even closure. I just needed peace, and now I was finally ready to rebuild it. Life after that day didn't return to normal overnight. The house still carried echoes of what happened, and sometimes the silence was too loud, reminding me of the nights I'd missed the signs. But slowly, little by little, we began to heal. I started working from home, turning the office into a space filled with laughter instead of stress. Every morning I'd make breakfast with the girls, and we created small traditions: pancake Fridays, backyard movie nights, bedtime stories that always ended with me saying, "You're safe now." Still, healing wasn't easy. There were nights when Emma would wake up crying, calling out for her mother who'd passed years ago, not Olivia. She remembered the warmth of her real mother's love, and I could see her trying to understand why someone else had tried to replace that with cruelty. I held her each time, whispering that not everyone who smiles means well, but that didn't mean love wasn't real. As weeks turned into months, Olivia's trial began. I didn't attend the first hearing. My lawyer told me it was mostly procedural, but my heart wasn't ready to face her again. The second hearing came faster than I expected, and this time, I sat in the back of the courtroom. Olivia looked smaller, thinner, her arrogance faded. When the judge read out the evidence, the video, the letter, the bank withdrawals, she kept her head down. For a moment, I almost felt pity. But then I remembered that stormy night, my daughters shivering in the rain, and all sympathy vanished. The verdict was clear, guilty on all charges. The sentence 5 years in prison with no parole for the first 3. It wasn't long, but it was justice. As she was led away, she turned her head slightly, her eyes meeting mine for a second. There was no hatred, no anger, just emptiness, like she finally realized what she'd lost. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt something inside me lift. Not joy, not triumph, just peace. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't angry anymore. That chapter was closed, and the pages ahead belonged to me and my daughters, to rebuild, to forgive, and to finally live without fear. The months that followed were quiet, almost too quiet at times, but peace has a strange way of feeling unfamiliar after chaos. I spent every day trying to give my daughters the childhood that had been stolen from them, piece by piece. We planted a small garden in the backyard, something their mother had always dreamed of doing. The girls loved it, digging in the dirt, chasing butterflies, waiting for the first flowers to bloom. Watching them laugh under the sunlight was like watching 2 hearts come back to life. I still worked long hours, but I never let business take priority over them again. I learned to close my laptop when they said, "Daddy, play with us," because I now understood how quickly moments can slip away. Every night, after they went to bed, I'd sit by the window with a cup of tea, thinking about how different everything could have been if I hadn't come home early that night. Sometimes I wondered if Olivia ever thought about what she'd done, sitting in that prison cell. Did she feel regret? Did she realize that the love she destroyed was the very thing she'd always wanted? But I never let those thoughts stay for long. The truth was, she no longer had power over me or my family. One evening, while tucking the girls in, Ella looked up at me and said, "Daddy, are you happy now?" I smiled, truly smiled, for the first time in what felt like years. "Yes, sweetheart, I am." She nodded sleepily and whispered, "Then Mommy in heaven will be happy too." Those words hit me harder than I expected. For so long I'd been consumed by betrayal and guilt, trying to fix what was broken. But in that moment, I realized something. I didn't need to fix the past. I just needed to live better in the present. That night, I stood by their doorway, watching them sleep, their tiny breaths soft and steady, and I finally allowed myself to breathe too. The rain had stopped, the clouds had cleared, and for the first time since that terrible night, I saw stars again, bright, endless, and full of hope. As time went on, I began to find purpose in sharing my story, not for pity, but to warn others that sometimes evil hides behind a beautiful smile and gentle words. I was invited to speak at a community center one evening to talk about single parenthood and recovery after betrayal. Standing there in front of strangers, my voice trembled at first. I wasn't used to talking about my pain out loud, but when I looked at the faces in the crowd, some filled with tears, others nodding in silent understanding, I realized that my story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to every parent who had trusted the wrong person, to every child who had been made to feel unwanted. I told them about that stormy night, about the moment I found my daughters in the rain, and how that pain had nearly broken me. But I also told them how love rebuilt us. When the event ended, a woman approached me with her son. She said softly, "Thank you. I left someone just like her last month. Hearing you, it made me believe we'll be okay." Those words stayed with me long after I left. Healing, I realized, grows stronger when it's shared. I started volunteering at a local shelter for abused children, helping them find comfort, guiding fathers who had lost their way. My daughters would often join me, bringing drawings or little gifts for the kids there. Watching them offer kindness so freely made me proud beyond words. They had every reason to grow bitter, but instead, they chose to grow gentle. One afternoon, while painting a wall at the shelter, Emma looked up at me and said, "Daddy, we should help more people who got hurt like we did." I smiled and nodded, realizing that the pain that once threatened to destroy us had now become our greatest strength. Every scar carried a lesson. Every tear carried a promise to protect, to love, to never turn away again. The past would always be a part of us, but it no longer defined us. We had stepped out of the rain and learned how to dance under the sun, stronger, wiser, and more grateful for every drop of peace that followed. Years have passed since that stormy night, yet I can still recall every sound, every feeling, every heartbeat that echoed through the darkness. But now, when I think back, the pain doesn't consume me, it reminds me of how far we've come. My daughters are teenagers now, bright, kind, and full of life. They still ask questions sometimes about Olivia, about why people hurt others when they could simply choose love. I tell them the truth that broken people break others, and that forgiveness isn't about excusing the past. It's about freeing yourself from it. We visit their mother's grave every year on her birthday, bringing fresh flowers and stories of our lives. The girls always smile, telling her about their school, their dreams, and the little victories that make them proud. I stand behind them, silently thanking her for the strength she left in them. Because even though life took us through storms, she left us with a love that never faded. As for me, I rebuilt not just a home, but a purpose. I expanded my business into a foundation that supports single parents and children who faced emotional neglect. I've seen fathers cry with guilt, mothers fight for their kids' safety, and children slowly find their laughter again. Each time I remember my own journey, the rain, the betrayal, the silence, and it reminds me that no matter how dark it gets, light always finds a way back. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear the faint echo of thunder in the distance, and for a split second, I'm back in that driveway, seeing my daughters in the rain. But instead of fear, I now feel gratitude. That night didn't destroy us, it revealed the truth. It taught me that love isn't measured by promises, but by protection. It showed me that a father's strength isn't in his wealth, but in his ability to stay when everything else falls apart. So when people ask how I survived betrayal, I simply smile and say, because I had too little reasons not to give up. The rain that once brought me heartbreak now reminds me of rebirth, and every drop that falls whispers the same message. Sometimes pain is just the beginning of strength.